Hello and welcome to Uncovered, the podcast with your host, Jason Irving. Join me in a journey to understand what's truly happening in your world and the world around you. This is not about how you're living life on the surface. It's about what's truly driving you from under the covers. I'm going to take you on a journey to deeply uncover the reason why you are here, the ultimate purpose in your problems and the way that they have shaped your life up until now. See, I believe you have a purpose, and your problems are the highway towards ultimate realization of that journey towards freedom and the reconnection of your true self. I've been told I have a different spin on most things, and I'll be giving you my understanding of life, love, and what we're all here for, purpose. To get the best out of this podcast, drop what you already know so you can discover what's beyond you. So join me, let's play this game of life and bring on liberation, transformation, and change. Let's do this. Hey guys, welcome to Uncovered. I'm here with Ian again. How are you, mate?
Yeah, going all right, Jess. Like I
said, a little bit of a cold.
A little bit sniffly, mate. Yeah.
Thanks for coming in today. Wanted to talk about empty buckets. So having an empty bucket when you're breathing oxygen and it feels like there's too much carbon dioxide in the air. And so what I mean by this is that, you know, when you're in that place of sort of feeling suicidal, that empty bucket starts to come forward.
Yeah, for sure. Like, just sort of thinking that the things like the stuff that you don't sort of pay attention to, the finances are wrong, relationships are wrong, families wrong, everything is just empty.
Yeah, and
a lot of it, and the idea of like putting things into that is just absolutely overwhelming.
Yeah, and so when it's overwhelming, I think what happens too, Ian, is that you try to put something in one of those maybe 6 buckets. We talk about the 6 areas of life, which is money, family, relationships, of intimacy, health, purpose, and one other one that I've forgotten. I don't know where it is, but it's not in my head right now.
Yeah, I think you already said it. Purpose. I had like things like career.
Yeah, and health. Did I say health?
Health, yeah.
And so when we've got these buckets that are empty, we fill them a little bit, but then they actually siphon themselves out pretty quickly too when you're feeling suicidal. So you get this potential, you get this feeling, you get this, maybe I've got some hope, and then you try for a little while, and then what happens? Like a situation might happen, and then it's like you put water in the bucket, there's a hole in the bucket, dear Liza, and everything starts to disappear and you feel despondency and despair again.
Yeah, it comes in again, like there's like something that like you've like tried to do, like something does happen, you mess something up, something comes in, messes you up, you know, you take it on board,
and you feel like you're back at square one again.
Something where you've put like the effort in and it gets like for me, like particularly money was a thing, you know, like where you sort of start to sort of maybe, you know, get a little bit happening that you can actually do some other things that you feel like you need to do, like, you know, go to doctors or dentists or get your car fixed even, and something happens to that and say everything
starts to go down the
drops
tubes.
Out, yeah.
And I think this is really, really common for people who are in that space of suicide. Is how are your buckets and what are you doing? And so when we've got that feeling of an empty bucket, and it doesn't really matter whether you have a lot of money or no money, because there's, you know, people that have committed suicide and you're like, how the hell did that person commit suicide? Because their buckets were low, but everyone saw that they looked like their buckets were high.
Yeah.
Whereas for you, Ian, you feel like there's so many areas in your life that aren't full, and they don't look full either. Right? They're literally empty on some level. So it's challenging when it's not just literal a thought, but it actually is a reality on some level. You had good money when your parents passed away, and you squandered it pretty quickly, and you took your opportunities away.
Yeah.
And that's what suicide does. It's like, well, you get given a gift, but then your buckets are so empty that you try and squander that gift away.
Yeah, that's just brought a thought to mind, like what I used to say to people, say, oh, give me anything good and I'll eventually wreck it, still to a degree is, like a thought,
that you'll wreck relationships, you'll wreck opportunities. I remember one time we were having lunch at my local suburb that I used to live in, and I remember just like I always have haunted thoughts going there, because I remember getting chased by a gang on the way home many times. Sometimes I have to run home simply because just not the right sort of people in the suburb, and I used to get chased away. And I was sitting in there having lunch and with you and another person, and a lady turned up, and you got really emotional, didn't you? And that lady happened to be the sister of
my ex.
Of your ex, who you left because she wanted a child.
Yeah, I couldn't commit. Yeah,
and you couldn't commit. And so sometimes our empty buckets don't give us that opportunity to say yes to something that would have been maybe borne fruit, because you didn't think you'd be a good dad.
I didn't think I'd be a good dad. I didn't want to inflict the pain basically of not being here and having had a child or a spouse,
Yeah. So
no point, because I'm going,
Yeah.
And she was found a good man and was getting married.
Yeah. So it's so interesting that, and we can get into that regret where we look and we see our decision-making processes where we've chosen empty bucket-based decisions that make us say no to great opportunities.
Yeah, I think that's really nailed it, Jace, saying making the choice to, with empty bucket decisions to actually say no, and the regret that comes in with that, and to be able to, having that thing where you look back at what you didn't do, what you could have done, where you've made those choices to say no.
And look, guys, for people who are hearing this, who have those suicidal thoughts and tendencies that are running, you'll understand what Ian's talking about. And I've had those suicidal tendencies, but it's not been so strong, and I've made good decisions to get myself moving in different directions. And so I understand where you're coming from. At the same time, I'm that other side where I've achieved a lot in life, so people go, how the hell did he commit suicide if I did? Because a lot of people don't say anything. The ones that put their hand up and say, I want to leave this planet, quite often don't. They're quite often a reach out for help. I basically pull this out of you, as opposed to you telling me anything about what you were thinking. When I was a therapist, so that's something that I think is quite hard for people to engage with. Is how do we help people with empty buckets? There's been lots of times that I've made suggestions to you and you've just not chosen to do them.
Yeah, true. Yeah, it can get into that point. It's a great suggestion, and you can see
the benefit.
And there's just this thing that'll say, for me, I won't be able to do it. There's no point
So that echo comes in, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, big time. It's that kind of thing of just looking at your track record and saying, I've never made a good decision. I've never made a good go of anything.
Yeah, and look, that's your thought processes that run. Like I've said to you many times, some of the decisions you've made since you've joined the academy have been amazing, and people have been able to show you and tell you that you've made really good decisions and you've been really supportive of people. The empty bucket head, though, doesn't hear a single thing, does it?
No.
Right, and that's the challenge. Is that we did a process on Wednesday. You're in third year of the academy, and we were talking about influence, and I basically spoke to you, Ian, about your influence, and we took everyone through, and I got you to say out loud, "I'm worth nothing to anybody."
Yeah, I am nothing.
I am nothing, and people got to experience that nature from you. And because you didn't get judged, you actually explained that you actually felt full.
Yeah. Because
you were allowed to express that your bucket is a nothingness. And you said in the morning, "I feel full now." And it was really interesting because you had a lady, Sue Field, who's in the academy, mentioned fullness, and empty and full is a polarity.
Yeah, it really was quite interesting, like in just the polarity of like the I am nothing, and what Sue mentioned about like I am everything, and it just like really like dropped in, and it was like fullness and expanded kind of. Like everything was there, the sadness, joy. It was pretty intense.
Pretty intense
and, like,
feeling.
Just for that, like the brief kind of moment there, where everything felt equilibrium, and I don't know if this is right, but like it felt like it didn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah. There wasn't a judgment.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I think probably, I'm just going to call this out, what I think may have happened just there is I think you touched God. I think you touched the fullness of God, and you got accepted because you actually felt equilibrium for the first time, and it was a sense that maybe you're not alone, maybe there is something there for you by accepting that there's nothing there.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll need to spend more time with it.
Yeah. But it brought happiness to you, and it was amazing to have an experience where there was an empty bucket, and then you felt validated for how you feel. And you've said this to me many times. There's a lot of people in the academy, they want to touch base with you, and you're just like, well, I've got nothing to give. Like, you don't feel that there's any worthwhile. And then I hear people say, oh, I got to experience Ian. I had such a great session from Ian. And you're sitting there wondering, why the hell would anybody want a great session from Ian? And that's pretty common when you're thinking you've got empty buckets. But other people are saying they're getting filled up by the fact that you are willing to hold a space for their emptiness. Because we all feel empty in some way, and when someone like you who knows emptiness right so well, the support of someone else's emptiness, actually what I got to see is actually makes you full.
It supports me somehow.
So it's interesting how your dysfunction becomes functional when people are not in good shape.
It's an interesting kind of feeling. Like I feel like there's a change that sort of happens in me. Like I lock in.
Yeah,
somehow.
Something happens. And guys, I just want to mention this to you, that I believe that this is actually an archetype. It's called the wounded healer archetype. So what this means is, I know this one well from being a healer, is that a lot of people who do therapy, they're wounded and they use another person to fill their bucket up.
Yeah, that's what it feels like.
Yeah, so they're helping, but you're in a different scenario, right? Because you don't think you can help, you're just sitting there. right? That's why our frameworks work really well, because the frameworks are actually about not trying to fix anything, it's trying to understand where someone is and holding a space for pain, so the pain can get a word out rather than to be constantly trying to find a way to solve it. So I think what you've got is an ability to help people without even knowing that you do, because this is the feedback I get.
I've received like a little bit of feedback just over Wednesday night too, which I don't know what to do with.
What was the feedback? What did you get?
Just from Laura Ingram. Just
what did she say?
How she really needed that. And like Philia as well. Just saying that was really good for her, not in like any great detail, Jace, but
so sometimes when someone is so empty, you actually give permission for pain to exist, and I think that's the magic of an empty bucket, to help others. And because you've been in our academy to stay alive as opposed to help anyone, every time I've said, why don't you go and chat to so and so, you're like, well, what am I going to do for them? And you end up helping them because you have absolutely no belief in yourself, right? That is the gift that comes with pure detachment, Ian, right? But you don't know that because you're just like, I'm a fuckknuckle and I have no ability. But when you're fully detached, it's the same. Right?
Yeah.
But you don't know you're doing it the way I do it. You do exactly me when you're in that space, but you don't know because you're an empty bucket.
Yeah, that's like I say, like when I am, like doing that and like something changes, and like that is pretty much like what it feels like. And like if I do have anything to say, I'm like, wow, like I should listen to myself, on that, or I should have, but it's the empty bucket is an interesting thing, mate.
And I think, look, no matter what's going on for you, if you're watching this, is that holes are in everybody, and for people who have that feeling of being suicidal, the hole's big. The thing that we've got to figure out is, well, is there something that we can do with that empty bucket to figure out how to actually plug the hole and be something in this world? Otherwise we will take our life. And it does take that courage to be here. It does take some courage to just try and plod along, and then something happens. And I know a lot of people who have taken that journey and then they've been taking meth or taking some sort of drug, and then they say, okay, I'm going to help all the addicts, I'm going to feed a whole lot of people, and they have this purpose to do. And that's people who have created something great out of something difficult. Now, not everybody can do that.
No.
Right? And that's the challenge, is not everyone can do that. And that's where it comes down to, well, it's great for those people giving hope, but where does it give hope to for the people like yourself who know you couldn't create some massive thing to help people change because it'd be too overwhelming for you, right? Those type of people were already successful in the world. They just chose. This is like an Eckhart Tolle or someone who was a very, very successful businessman, lost his shit, and then he ended up helping people and became an amazing personal development person in his own way. I'm not really connected to his philosophies. They're not for me, but he helps a lot of people. So though that doesn't work for someone like you, who has to learn to re-establish how to eat right, how to look after the body, how to take care and do the small things right. And this is the normal population for people who are feeling those suicidal tendencies and thoughts, is to be able to, how do we get that equilibrium and balance right when you're empty buckets?
Yeah, it's sort of thing like, and may not be like the same for everybody. That there's this thing that like it can change. You know, something can change, and like and that can be in just a small aspect of like having breakfast in the morning, or like whatever it is that you need to do, you know, and not always easy to do it. You know, this is the hard question: is like how do you convey that to somebody, you know, that like something can change or something can be different. Just even like in moment to moment, you know.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, guys, to understand is that suicidaal thoughts are actually that they're moment to moment. They're not. They don't just they're here and now they're gone. It doesn't work that way for a lot of people. That's why it's a systemic mental issue for people that people have to know how to work with and sometimes manage, right? And so what I want you guys to understand is that there's no recipe. So when someone says, hey, here's a recipe for how to not be suicidal anymore, that's why it's not working, because it's individual, and people will find a way individually to move themselves into connection with those suicidal thoughts and know that there's another way forward. And I know there's lots of people in the Academy who have said to me they're breathing oxygen because of our work.
Yeah.
And I think what our work does, and it's not for everyone obviously, our work allows people to really accept those dungeon-based thoughts that are empty. And then the jail becomes, instead of being a locked jail, it becomes something where there's a key on the floor. It's the person's responsibility to pick that key up, put it in the lock, and walk out of the jail that they've confined themselves in with the emptiness.
Yeah, I think that sort of explains like pretty well, like, you know, the guts of it, in that like where things can change, and it takes a decision, and it can be moment by moment, and it can be like where you have to be, you know, that has to happen a lot through that day, a lot through that week, a lot through that year. Yeah.
And I think that's where people really don't understand the suicidal tendency, is it's like it has to be tended to and worked with consistently, not just, okay, I'm better now.
Yeah, that doesn't work. And I've been down that track thinking I've dealt with stuff, mate, you know?
Yeah.
And it's not so.
Yeah. So, guys, I really want to thank you for listening to this today, and thank you, Ian, for coming in.
Thanks, Jason.
And spending time with us today to understand the empty buckets to do with suicide, what it is, and just know, look, if you're dealing with suicide right now, or you know a person who has those tendencies, make sure you reach out. It's the best thing, because look, you don't know what to do, and so sometimes just a little bit of guidance, a little bit of a move in one direction. It is, sometimes it feels like one toe at a time, not one foot or a stride. So it's you know, trying to get one toe in front of the other sometimes, especially when the buckets are empty. So if you really like this content, or you know someone who needs to hear this, I'd love it if you could like and review this and share it. To see us live or on a video, it's www.wellnessbreakthroughacademypodcast.com. Thanks so much, Ian, for jumping in today, and thanks so much for listening.
Thanks, Jason.